Hello, guys. Wayne Fillmore here. And I think the last time I did another video was probably about two or maybe even a day ago, if I'm right. I think it was 2 days ago. But nonetheless, good mythical morning or good mythical midnight because it's 12:30 a.m. where I'm at. So I wanted to have a small short talk on evolution as it relates to natural and special theology and of course the Bible, and the Bible being that special theological revelation that God has given to mankind. And so I have some questions. I'm just going to go and I'm going to read them off and I'm going to basically give my answer. And I want you guys also to understand that these will be answers that you probably never heard before, but don't just take my word for it. Do your research, look this stuff up. And so, one of the first questions that I'm actually going to go and I'm going to tackle is it's a question that I get a lot from a lot of people, especially people who hold to the young Earth position, who think that the universe is 6,000 years old, which is actually my old position. So I'm a former younger creationist. I used to hold to that view that the universe is 6,000 years old and Adam and Eve were the first people, etc. So I definitely do have compassion and sympathy for the people who do hold to this view. But I also want to let you know that it's never too late for you to actually change your mind. And in you doing so, that doesn't mean you're a bad Christian. It doesn't mean that you don't take the Bible seriously. I think that if somebody is actually willing to change their position, especially myself, whom I actually held to the younger position for as long as I can remember, even when I didn't specifically know that the position I held to was called younger creationism. It was something that was just engraven in me since I was a child. I would go to different churches, and me being in the denomination I'm in, especially with me being in America, because America is very fundamental. It was just engraven into me the modern interpretation of scripture, that there was a worldwide flood, Adam and Eve were the first people, et cetera, et cetera. And so a lot of Christians today have these beliefs. It doesn't mean these beliefs are correct because everybody holds to them, but it definitely is hard to break away from these beliefs. And then after you break away, you have to build your theology all up again. And so if you do happen to have an open mind, and if you do want to change your mind, I commend you for that. And if you have any questions or concerns or comments, feel free to ask me because I can relate. So I think that if that's something you want to do, feel free to do it. But this question is a question that I get from a lot of people. And they say, how can a loving God allow uh, through the process of evolution, or how can a loving God use the process of evolution when it relies on the death of billions of animals in order for populations to change? So basically, if God is all loving, how can an all loving God allow for different animal species to go about for billions of years, basically dying and eating each other and doing things that humans think are evil? So why would God allow for animals to kill other animals, right? Why would God allow for animals to uh, get cancer diseases? Why would God allow for animals to die? Well, number one, as it relates to animals eating other animals, in Psalm 104, I think if I'm correct, is verse 9. If you go and you read Psalm 104 and you open up the text, Psalm 104 is actually a creation psalm. And so it's going into more detail on creation that Genesis didn't go into. And so David is given a description of what the original creation would have looked like. And so we can know what at least the earth, what God's plans for was for the planet, was when we look at Psalm 104. So it's going into more depth on creation. So we don't just look at Genesis, but we look at the other creation accounts in the Bible so we can get the full picture. And Psalm 104, verse 9, it says, um, the lion cries out for his prey from God, and the Lord gives it to him. So not only does the hungry lions and the carnivorous animals, the carnivores, they go and they ask for food from the Lord, and it says their prey with an E, not with an A, and God gives it to them on a silver freaking platter. And so when people say that they don't believe there was any type of animal death or animal suffering, animals eating other animals before the fall of man, well, you got a problem when you're considering Psalm 104, which is talking about that original creation, and it's talking about carnivorous activity in the garden, or specifically in the original creation that God had made. Now, we also should remember too that it's not a bad thing for an animal to kill another animal. When a lion kills a gazelle, um, is that evil? Is that a terrible, horrible, bad thing? Well, in our minds as humans, yeah, we think it is. But remember, animals can't sin. When an animal hurts another animal, they don't care about justice or morality or right or wrong. They don't take each other to court and sue each other. Animals don't care about justice. They're animals. And so that's one of the core things that separate us humans from the other animals. So humans, biologically, we are animals, but we are a different kind of animal. It was Aristotle who actually said humans are the rational animal. And so we can think and we can use logic and rationale, and we have certain moral values that we hold to that animals don't. So when a wolf or a lion or carnivorous animals do things like that to other animals or maybe herbivores and etc., it's not a bad thing. And actually, we can look at it as a good thing because a lot of these animal deaths, getting into animal deaths, they actually help sustain the ecosystem. So even the death of the dinosaurs and all of the other animals that came before them, which were like sort of like reptile, mammalish animals and animals that came before them, they die, and some of them, of course, are preserved in fossilization. But also, when they die, when the sediment layers of the earth are basically eroding over top of them, and those bones are crushed up, they create oils and fossil fuels and biodeposits that we now use today for machinery and for power and all types of sort of things that we use for today. I mean, coal, which comes from what's the word I'm looking for? It is, well, yeah, decomposition. I guess that's a word I can use. Decomposition of different animals in the past. If those animals weren't buried and dead and basically decomposed over billions of years, we wouldn't have the resources that we have right now. And so, even in the death of these animals, God basically made sure that every bit of creation didn't go to waste. Even when you look at stars, when you look at the death of stars, when stars blow up in supernovas, I mean, every element on the periodic table, except for the last 26, which are man-made, um, we're made out of those same stars that blew up. Hydrogen, helium, um, iron, sulfate, well, not sulfate, but carbon. Um, we're made out of those elements on the periodic table, which came from the violent destruction and eruption of stars billions of light years away. And so when we look at things like animal death and natural disasters and natural destructions, even like earthquakes and stuff like that, everything in the universe, in the cosmos, and even on this planet is for the purpose and benefit of us humans. And so it's not a bad thing that these natural things happen. It's actually just the way things are. And it's better for things to be this way because they benefit humans and mankind in the long run. And so what I would say is the reason why God had these different animal species and he allowed them to die and come into the scene over and over and over again is number one, it shows God's creativity Number two, God enjoyed it. God didn't have to do any of this over such a long period of time like he did. He could have made all of this in 2 seconds if he wanted to, but he enjoyed the process of creating. And also, number three, he did it for the benefit of mankind. So even right now, we're benefiting from past ice ages that happened in the past before. Um, so the ice ages actually helped out with the climate. And so right now, we're only even able to have agriculture and everything else like we have today because the past ice age cycles that we had in the past stabilized the climate. So now we can go out and we can have agriculture and plant food and go out and plant crops and make clothing out of our material and et cetera that we were able to plant and do whatever because of the stable climate conditions that was basically prepared for us again billions of years ago in the past. And so a lot of the resources and stuff that we had today, they didn't really come from us. Humans didn't do anything to bring about the resources that we are now using today. These resources actually came from the natural events that happened in the past, which I would say as a Christian is because of the planning and the grace of God. So I don't have a problem with evolution and animals dying in the past, and I don't think it's a waste at all. I think a lot of these things, well, not even think, but we scientifically know these things are beneficial for the progress of mankind. So another question is, does evolution falsify God's existence? Well, with me being a former science teacher, and of course I'm a Christian, um, I don't think evolution falsifies God's existence at all. I think that even when it comes to the process of evolution, I think that we can look at evolution and Christians can interpret it as a creative process that God used for the mechanism of bringing on us humans and also, of course, other animal species. And so when we look at evolution, of course, um, because we're so familiar with the atheistic interpretation of evolution, just the broad naturalism interpretation of evolution, um, it is pretty common for people to equate evolution with atheism. However, even the father of modern classification, who was Carlos Linnaeus, if you go and you open up a Linnaeus, or even if you type in his name on Google, Carlos Linnaeus, who was the father of modern taxonomy, who actually was a creationist, on his Linnaeus, on the cover of his book, where he wrote the classifications of animals, he had God creates, but Linnaeus arranges. And this was about a century before Charles Darwin was even born. And so Darwin was using the classifications that Linnaeus had made. And you know what Linnaeus classified humans as? Homo sapiens sapien. So the classification of humans as Homo sapiens actually didn't even have anything to do with evolution. It was from a creationist, but nonetheless, um, when we do think about evolution, we think about atheism and no purpose and no meaning and randomness. But the science doesn't actually say that because, of course, science doesn't deal with theology. Science deals with the natural world, and theology deals with the supernatural and the things that we can't see, and etc. So I would say no, evolution doesn't falsify God because that's not what the theory even talks about. The theory of evolution doesn't touch on God. The theory of evolution doesn't touch on anything supernatural. The theory of evolution just says that populations change over time, and as they change over time, they adapt to their environment, and it's that simple. Now, some people may have made evolution say different things throughout the ages to support their religious beliefs or philosophical ideas, but that's what the science says. Now, there can be theological interpretations of what people believe. If evolution is true, this is what it means in the long run. But that's not what the science says. Science is science. Theology is theology. We can have theological interpretations of science, but science doesn't necessarily disprove God one way or the other. And when I say God, I mean Yahweh, Creator God. So that's pretty much my take on that. Another question is, why is the process of evolution necessary for God's plan? So the title of the video was how God used evolution to save the cosmos. And so, um, like I said before, everything in the universe was created for the benefit and redemption of us human beings. So the universe itself was created for the purpose of redemption. The Bible says that even before the creation of the world, God began his redemptive works. If you look in Romans, I think it may be Romans 15, um, it talks about how it was Yahweh, it was actually God who basically put the creation under bondage of decay in hopes that in the new future he can liberate it and he can glorify it. Now, there's an idea in ancient Near Eastern thought called theosis, which, of course, modern Western Christians don't know much about. But theosis is actually the process of deification. And so basically, how an ancient Near Eastern would have looked at that text in Romans, or um, how even an early Christian would have looked at the text in Romans, they would have known about deification and theosis, and they would have basically picked up on this deification language and understood that what Paul basically was trying to say is not that our ultimate hope as Christians is to die and to go to heaven, which, of course, if your loved ones are deceased and gone and they are Christians, of course, they are with Jesus, but that's not our hope as Christians, is to go to heaven. But the thing that makes biblical theology a little different isn't that we die and we go to this magical place in the sky, as some atheists like to say, but it's that we see in Revelations there's this holy city that's coming down and it's having union with this planet Earth. And so it's not that we will go up and ascend into heaven necessarily, but it is heaven that will come down and join union with the universe. And so it is actually the universe will be glorified. The universe will be, in a sense, perfect. It will be godlike. And so through this process of deification, or through the process of evolution, deification can be made possible. Now, how? How? Well, as you know, or as you may not know, um, we actually are made out of the 126 elements on the periodic table. I think that's how many is on there at least. Um, I could be wrong. If I am wrong, correct me on that. But all of the elements on the periodic table actually come from the life and the death of stars. And so, like hydrogen and helium, they come from the fusion of what we call dwarf stars. And so, hydrogen and helium fuse, and as these stars keep on fusing, they start fusing heavier and heavier elements until you get to iron. And then, after the star fuses all of the elements up to iron, the rest of the elements we actually get from the explosion of supernovas. And so all of the elements in our body were cooked up in stars. And in a sense, I like what Carl Sagan said. He said, we are stardust. We are made of star stuff. So we are connected to the stars. In a sense, you could say that this is a Carl Sagan quote. He said, you could say that we are a way for the universe to know itself, which is pretty awesome. Everything else in the universe isn't conscious except for the organisms on this planet, which are made up of the same material as everything else, but it just so happens that we have consciousness, which now we're actually getting to know about consciousness and how that works. And our consciousness is just a different recombination of a mathematical pattern, which is pretty awesome. But with that being said, my point is we are all connected to the cosmos. We all are connected to each other, but not only to each other, but we're connected to a blade of grass. We're connected to a rock, to the sea, to the sky, we are connected to those stars because we are made up of the same stuff as those stars. And so you could say, like I said in the beginning, not one piece of creation went to waste, and God used everything that he had from the creation of the universe up until now, and he recycled it in different ways and different combinations to make us human beings. Now, what does this have to do with, of course, deification? Well, when Jesus came onto the scene, when Jesus, the God man, basically became human incarnate and put on human form, human flesh, he needed to be connected to the cosmos. Why? Because in Jesus, when he died on the cross, he redeemed the cosmos. And if evolution is not true, and if we are not all connected, Jesus would have had to die each and every time for every person, for every organism, for every object and every atom in the universe over and over and over and over again, which would be impossible. And so Jesus entered into the system. He entered into history. And when he did die on the cross, because through the process of evolution, all of us are all connected to the cosmos. And so when Jesus died, he didn't just go in, he didn't just redeem humanity through the process of evolution, because everything is all connected. Jesus redeemed the cosmos. And so atheists use time and chance to disprove God. But in a Christian perspective, it was actually time and chance that God used to save the world. And so that means if there's aliens out there in another galaxy or even in another world, because everything is made out of the same stuff, and because we're made out of that stuff too, and everything is connected. It was actually better that God used this process instead of God specially creating, because had God specially created every single time, this plan actually wouldn't have been able to work. And so God knew exactly what he was doing, when he was doing it. And with him being patient and with him allowing the creation to actually create itself. I like this quote. I'm not sure who said it, but they said, sure, God could have created a universe, but God has something so much better in mind. He decided to create a universe that could create itself. And so, and God having these plans set in motion, and he even knew about this stuff before the creation of the world. I'm pretty sure that God knew what he was doing before he created us. He put this plan in motion. Things basically went in the full swing, and over 13.8 billion years of universal history, God redeemed the cosmos 2,000 years ago. And that's something Christians can boast about, and Christians can be proud about, and Christians can be happy about, and you can share that with your friends. And so I don't see evolution as a bad thing. I see evolution as a beautiful process that God not only used to create, but God used to redeem. And if it weren't for this process, we wouldn't even be having this conversation about the new heavens and the new earth or anything. Because it is by this mechanism that we're all connected. If you look at one of my other videos, I actually talked about how God used time to redeem humanity and why God created time. So I think it's talking about, I think the title of the video is God, Space, Time, and You. But these are my thoughts on evolution and creation, evolution, and theology. I know this was somewhat pretty sophisticated and prestigious in nature. So if you feel like this was pretty overwhelming, just let me know. If you have any comments or concerns or questions, comment below. I try my best to get back to them in a timely fashion. But I really hope you guys enjoy this. I really like doing these videos and giving people my perspective on theology from an evolutionary creation viewpoint. I know there aren't a lot of channels like this where a lot of people who hold to the evolutionary position, who are Christians, have somewhat of a platform where they can go out and talk about their views. You go and you look for any evolutionary creation videos or whatever. These videos don't normally pop up. You usually get younger creationists or older videos. So I'm trying to change the game, guys. So feel free to, if you want to, you guys can even mirror my videos and you can share them on your platforms, share them with your buddies and share them with your friends. And I actually won't be deleting my old videos when I was a younger creationist, because I want people to see my progression and how I changed over time and how it's okay to change your mind. Um, so like I said before, if you are a younger creationist, I don't knock you for it. Don't make fun of you for it at all. I used to be younger creationist myself. We can talk about it. Maybe you might change your mind. So with that being said, I know I talked everybody's ears off tonight um, on this topic, but these are pretty much my views. And if you guys have anything else you want to talk about, let me know. All right. Until next time, good luck and good night.